Hey, what's up everybody? I'm Charles Maring, and today I'm going to be talking about the new Lumix GH5S. I got a chance to work with this camera a little bit this week behind the scenes with our vlog and put it through the paces a little bit in some low light situations. And I'm going to be sharing some footage that I captured on it along with some thoughts and ideas regarding this new camera. So we'll cut to the chase in a second. For a moment, let me cut to our intro. So I am, quote unquote, a modern artist, and what I mean by that is that I'm taking advantage of all that we have at our fingertips as creative individuals and artists and entrepreneurs. And I'd argue that this is probably the most fascinating time right now to be an artist and an entrepreneur, especially in the field of imaging. We could be quite possibly witnessing a renaissance in art, an art movement that is the most significant movement in the history of the world currently, where human ideas, art, technology, science, old world craftsmanship, and entrepreneurship are kind of all colliding and overlapping. And it just blows my mind what a physical individual can accomplish these days on their own due to all of this convergence in technology and art. So with that said, let's dive into the topic at hand, which is exploring the Lumix GH5 a little bit. I got a chance to put this through the paces a little bit this week, and I've got a few ideas to share. First, we got two cameras here. Let's talk about both of them. On the left here, I have a Lumix GH5. This has been my go-to camera over the past year or so. On the right here, we have the Lumix GH5S. The Lumix GH5 is geared towards being a hybrid camera, to say the least. The stills and video coming off of it are remarkable. This is a 20 megapixel camera. The GH5S is half of that, a 10 megapixel camera, and geared more towards high-end video than stills. But we could talk about resolution a little bit as well and what that means. Now, let me preface all of this by saying I am a Lumix ambassador. Years ago, I was carrying DSLRs and cinema cameras to commercial jobs and projects that I had and to weddings that I was photographing and filming. And I found that having to carry both was just a little bit overwhelming, didn't allow me to focus on the moment so much. And so having lots of gear can be distracting. And around that time, the Lumix GH4 was announced, I bought one for the video because it was touting 4K video, and I'm like, this would be amazing. And I ended up going to Lumix for the video, staying for the stills because the stills in the GH4 were beautiful as well. And I just found that I could do so much more with a smaller camera, be more mobile, be more stealth, more in the moment. And that's just the way I work personally. Now we're a couple years later, we're seeing the GH5 come out, GH5S come out, and now we're looking at two different cameras for two different purposes. Let's talk about that a little bit. Now, resolution does matter as a still photographer, but it only matters a little bit. It's not what the manufacturers say, and I know this for fact because over the past 20 plus years, I photographed some of the most high-end celebrity assignments and jobs you could ever imagine to do all over the world. And I've worked back in the earlier part of my digital career with 6 megapixel cameras professionally. And so resolution doesn't matter on the stills front as much as a lot of camera manufacturers would want you to believe. Now let's talk about that. Behind me here, you're seeing a 60-inch print. This is a 40 by 60 printed on canvas from a wedding from an 8 megapixel camera many, many years ago. Looks absolutely stunning. You can walk up to it. It's beautiful. There's no pixelation, lots of detail. So you can even walk up to my studio now and you'll see 40 by 60s printed off of a 6 megapixel camera. And all of my clients, no matter who they are, walk in and say, wow, I would love to have something like that. Where resolution really matters in still photography is if you are doing fine artwork, you are doing 80-inch prints and their landscapes, every detail counts. You want to be able to walk up and see every little pixel, every detail is a pixel peeper. But if you're photographing people, softness is a beautiful thing sometimes, because what we're talking about here is the fact that Digital cameras capture files so much sharper than film ever did. I find myself personally in Lightroom pulling the clarity slider back, which is kind of the same as printing a lower megapixel print huge. It's a little bit softer, but a beautiful kind of softness. And so don't be discouraged away from a 10 megapixel camera, even for stills, if you are a wedding photographer or an event photographer out there, because yes, it can be done, and yes, it can be done beautifully. In fact, I see this working for me in a multitude of ways. We'll get into all of that, but if we're gonna be talking GH5S, we gotta be talking video a little bit, because that's what this is built upon. This is built for your high-end video production. So let's dive into that a little bit. Now, there's a couple difference here between the two. Number one, the GH5 is good in good light and decent in low light. This is remarkable. GH5S is remarkable in low light, which I'll share with you here. GH5S has a little wider crop factor on the wide shot, which is a good thing. We'll share that in a minute. GH5 though does have 5-axis stabilization built in on the chip, industry leading. I love that about it. I know it's a deal breaker for some people. I'm gonna share my thoughts on that as we go. But yes, 5-axis stabilization is a beautiful thing. I find myself hand-holding full frame equivalents of 800mm lenses. Butter smooth for video. You would think I was holding an entire camera rig when I'm doing this. And no, it's this little camera, even with long lenses, no problem. But there's times when I may be shooting in a car, and if the car's hitting any kind of road bumps or going over railroad tracks, and it's mounted in the dash of the car, you will see a little bounce from the 5-axis stabilization. And when you don't have that, it just looks normal. And so the GH5S not having 5-axis stabilization can be a benefit if you're a filmmaker and you're doing car chase scenes or any kind of massive amounts of action. Let's share that with you here via some footage I captured this week. Now, we have a vlog on our channel at Together in Style, on all channels, YouTube and Facebook especially. And with that said, we mount our camera in the dash a little bit. My wife and I were on our way to Hartford. I had just got back from Cincinnati giving a keynote speech. And while we were doing this, I said, well, let's just talk a little bit along the way up. And I mounted a GH5S in the dash of our car. This is a 12mm Leica 1.2 lens. This is in a Vlog format. So this is Vlog, and the GH5S comes with Vlog built in, mind you. GH5, just the standard GH5, you have to add it later for $100. So having log footage is a beautiful thing, because look at the dynamic range in the video here. And I'm not pushing the envelope of these cameras. Let me just mention that both of these cameras can capture 4K at 400 megabits per second in 10-bit 422. All the footage I'm going to share with you here is actually 100 megabit per second in 4K instead at 8-bit. So still looks absolutely beautiful, but choosing the right settings for the right purpose. This is vlogging, mind you. So with that said, let's dive back in. So the cool thing about Panasonic and Lumix is they have beautiful color science. Their skin tones are beautiful out of their cameras. The color is beautiful out of their cameras. And by simply adding a LUT to this, and I'm talking about a standard free LUT that's out there, it's the Alexa Log C709. It turns it from flat to graded, as you see here. And look at the beautiful skin tone, look at the dynamic range. Anytime I want to just have a clean, beautiful image with a great skin tone and great dynamic range, that's what I do. I shoot it in Vlog and I add that Alexa Log C709 LUT, and that's what I get. But there are times, of course, when we want to shoot at night. And the GH5 is okay for that. You can pull it off. But the GH5S, you can do it so beautifully that it just blows my mind every time I look at the footage. Having a little wider crop factor is also key, because with a 12mm lens in the car driving like we were sharing here, on the GH5 it's kind of shoulder to shoulder, pretty tight. On the GH5S, it gives me a little room to show the shot, see the outside of the car, and I like that about it. So let's move on. Let's look at some night footage. Now, I'm in Hartford, Connecticut here. We're driving, and you're gonna see us hit a pothole right off the bat, but you won't see any bounce to it. GH5S not having 5-axis, This is one of the benefits. Here we go. Pothole. See, it just kind of rides along just as it should. Here we are. This is already graded. Again, Alexa Log C709, and I'm at 2500 ISO, Leica 12mm 1.2, and look at the dynamic range. Look at the beautiful light on our faces. Look how clean the file is. Really beautiful, really clean. But we are in town. We're in a city. So yes, we're going to have more light on our faces because of that. What happens when we hit the highway? Well, on the highway, it gets darker, as you can see. Hindsight, I would have probably pushed this to 3200 ISO or 6400 ISO possibly, depending on my taste. But again, still looks good, still looks beautiful, still the same LUT applied to it. But what happens, how clean is it when we push it to 6400? Let's go ahead and move forward and do it. So we live on a very dark country road, and on that road, there's very few lights that we pass, and this is ungraded at 6400 ISO, and if you look at this on the computer, there's a little bit of noise in the shadows that we're going to crush down, but it's very, very subtle when we apply it. And the only lighting that you're seeing here is the dash cam, not dash cam, but the dash GPS that's in our car. That's the only thing lighting our faces here. And you'll see when it's graded, still looks good, still looks beautiful. I actually even went ahead and lifted the curve on this shot to brighten it up more. Really beautiful, really clean ISO. So yeah, so that's kind of one of the thoughts around where the GH5S really shines above the GH5. Kind of depends on what you're looking for. You know, if I was primarily a still shooter, and shot a little video, I would definitely be a GH5 shooter, no doubt. If I shot mostly video and some stills, I would be a GH5S person. But really what I love is the fact that these cameras are so small and lightweight, even if I roll out with both, I'm still lighter and more compact, more stealth than a full frame DSLR with a 70-200. So keep that in mind. This does open up avenues to do so many different things. Let's dive into a couple other things real quick. Now, number one, I play in a rock band, as you saw in the little opening segment here, and I just wanted to do some tests the other day. And so, as you can see, I have a little incandescent light above, and that is a paper lantern with an incandescent bulb dimmed down as low as we can dim it, that it'll allow us, and we have some DJ lighting in the band room. Now, what I want to bring to your attention is that with, and let me just hit pause here, with the Lumix GH5, I couldn't do this shot. Even with a 7mm, this is the 7-14 f4, I couldn't quite pull it off because I would get so much distortion on the edges of the room due to the width. And the camera would be completely against the wall. That's how much room we have to work with. With the GH5S, I can now shoot the band all at once. And if I do pull the guitar players in just a little bit, we won't have distortion at all on them. And so this is opening up opportunities, for me to play with the band and to do that full shot corner to corner on a single cam, and I'm happy about that. Here I'm at 2500 ISO, kind of a dark room. You can see the lantern still lit up above, and as we move forward you'll see kind of some changes that happen here. This is at 6400 ISO. I kind of like the darker version better. I was just doing some tests and checking it out. You can see me staring at the camera, but it's washing out at 6400. So it's choosing the right ISO, choosing the right camera for the job, and that's kind of where we stood with that. I want to share one more thing, and that is if you're an independent filmmaker, a lot of times you want to work in a room setting without having to bring in so much gear that it's overwhelming. And I love shooting weddings this way because it can be so stealth and so unobtrusive. And so let me bring you into the art studio here. And so I do a lot of painting, as you'll get to learn if you kind of follow our channel at Together in Style. And in the room here, I want it to feel and look like it does to our eyes. And so all the lighting in the room that I have here is the incandescent bulbs. They're 25-watt bulbs, LEDs above the paintings. And then what I've done is I brought in a little Dracast LED panel. I'll bring it up here for you to see. And this runs on battery power if we wish. We can plug it in if we wish as well. but I have it dimmed down as low as I can possibly dim it. And I love that I can light rooms and scenes now with such ease by simply adding a little bit of a key light here and just complement the incandescent light in the room. So I love working with the GH5S because of that. And what I'm working in more times than not, I find, is the dual native ISO setting at ISO 2500. I find that that gives me an incredible amount of light to work with, especially when I'm working with primes to really shoot anything that I want and just use a balance of incandescent light and a kiss of LED. So that's kind of my story on the GH5S. If anybody who's considering these two cameras, if you have any questions, reach out to me via comments or reach out on Facebook, YouTube, anywhere else. Always happy to answer and help out aspiring filmmakers and photographers who are trying to find their way. And let me tell you, get out there, make the most of this incredible time in history, in art right now. Like I said, it is an amazing time to be an artist and an entrepreneur, and I wish you the best of luck in all of your journeys, creatively speaking. Have a fantastic day.